The corridor was already breaking into cheers when Kweku reached the notice board, notebook locked against his chest. He had arrived before most students, early enough to watch the headmaster's assistant cross the corridor with the final sheet held flat between both hands. Kweku kept his place near the wall and checked the date written at the top of his notebook again, the same date he had checked before sunrise. The paper went up. A pin struck the board, then another. The hallway changed at once. Students surged forward, shoulders pressing, shoes scraping, voices bouncing off the concrete. Someone shouted a name. Someone else jumped so hard the notice board rattled. Phones lifted over heads. Parents were called before the ink had settled under the glass. Kweku stepped in carefully, 1 foot at a time, protecting the notebook from elbows and falling water. Rain began as a light tapping against the windows, soft at first, then steady enough to thread through the noise. He reached the second row of bodies and stopped. Another student blocked the list while posing for a picture. Kweku waited 3 seconds, then slipped through the gap as the student turned. His notebook bent against his ribs. His free hand rose toward the paper. The printed names waited in straight black lines. Kweku drew one breath, fixed his eyes on the first line, and began. His finger moved down the list, stopping at each name long enough to check the spelling, then the initials, then the space after it. The first line was not his. The second was not his. By the fifth, the cheers behind him had turned into a hard wall of sound. He kept reading. A hand bumped his shoulder. He planted his palm against the board and did not step back. At the bottom, his finger stopped on the last printed name. There was no Kweku. He blinked once, then dragged his finger back to the top so fast the paper trembled under the glass. Maybe he had skipped a line. Maybe the ink had blurred where the rain light crossed the window. He read again, slower this time, printing each name without sound. First name, wrong. Second name, wrong. Third name, still wrong. The corridor pressed closer as students squeezed past him toward the winners, but Kweku stayed fixed in front of the board. His notebook slid lower against his ribs. He caught it before it fell and pinned it there with his elbow. His finger reached the bottom again. Nothing changed. He checked the spaces between lines, as if a missing name might be hiding there. He checked the margins. He checked the final full stop beneath the last name. The page gave him no opening. Kweku leaned closer, close enough for his breath to miss the glass. 2 years, he said, too low for the crowd to catch. And my name isn't here. Rain struck the windows harder. His finger remained on the empty space. Kweku lifted his finger from the glass and turned toward the office door. The corridor still shook behind him, but the sound thinned as he crossed the floor. 1 step at a time, notebook clamped under his arm. He knocked once, no answer. He knocked again, harder. The small service window scraped open, and the secretary looked up from a stack of papers without rising. Kweku put both hands on the ledge to keep them still. Please, madam, the scholarship list. Is there another page? My name is not on the one outside. The secretary reached for a stamp, pressed it into ink, and marked a form before she answered. That is the final list. Kweku stayed at the ledge and waited for the rest of the explanation. He leaned closer. Final? Maybe there was a correction. Maybe some names were left out. She slid one sheet aside and pointed past him toward the board. No correction. The award has been given to Minister Asante's son. Outside the office, another cheer rose. Kweku turned back to the notice board and forced his eyes to that winner's line. The name sat there cleanly, untouched by the noise around it. Kweku's jaw worked once, but no sound came. He walked to the window. Rain struck the concrete outside, breaking into white splashes. He opened the door to the courtyard and stepped into it. Water hit his scalp, ran down his face, and darkened the notebook against his side. Behind him, students kept celebrating. In front of him, the school gate blurred behind the rain. Kweku did not move. Kweku crossed the school gate after the taxis had thinned and the cheers had dissolved behind the rain. He did not run. Puddles broke under his steps, splashing grit against his legs. His notebook had swollen at the edges. He pressed it flat against his stomach, but water still found the pages. At the junction, headlights swept across a billboard where a graduate lifted a certificate above the words, "Your future starts here." Kweku stopped beneath it. A car tore through the gutter and threw muddy water over the curb. The slogan kept shining. Kweku looked up once, then lowered his head. God, is this a joke? Did I do all that work just to stand behind someone else? He kept walking until Fatima's gate appeared through the rain. He almost passed it. The door opened before his knuckles reached the wood. Fatima blocked the doorway, saw the notebook sagging in his grip, and stepped aside. "Come inside. Sit." Kweku entered and left water across the floor. His mouth opened, but his jaw locked. He dropped the notebook on a chair. "I didn't get it, Fati. Minister Asante's son did." Fatima lowered the fire, pulled a chair out, and set a bowl before him. She did not say the loss did not matter. She did not ask him to swallow it. "First, eat." "I can't." "You can be angry and eat." "Sit." He sat. His hand shook. Soup spilled across the table. Fatima wiped it once and pushed the bowl closer. Kweku took one mouthful, then another. The rain kept hammering above them, but his breathing slowed. For 3 weeks, Kweku woke before dawn and had nowhere to go. He opened his textbooks at the table, read the same paragraph twice, then shut them when the words stopped holding shape. By mid-morning, he swept Fatima's yard, stacked bowls, carried water, and snapped at anyone who asked about school. One Tuesday, Fatima put coins in his palm and sent him for charcoal. Kweku took the long road back, delaying the house, delaying the books. Near the corner, hammering struck from a narrow workshop, metal on punch, punch through leather, a hard, clean rhythm. He stopped at the doorway. Inside, strips lay in piles, scraps filled baskets, and a man bent over a cutting board. The man did not look up. "If you are buying, enter. If not, stop blocking my light." Kweku stepped in. The man handed him a broom. That was the interview. Dust, thread ends, and leather shavings gathered under the benches. Kweku swept until his palms burned. The next day, he sorted scraps by size. The day after that, the man gave him a dull blade and a ruined strip. Cut straight, Kweku pressed too hard. The blade wandered. The strip curled uselessly on the table. He threw it into the basket. The man pulled it out and placed another strip beside it. Again. By sunset, Kweku's fingers stung. 2 blisters had opened, and the table held more failure than work. He came back the next morning before the hammering started. After a month at the bench, Kweku completed a wallet that did not fall apart when he pulled the flap open. The seam leaned. One corner bulged. He turned it in his hands, ready to cut it apart, but Fatima put coins on the table and took it before he could argue. That sale did not make him a craftsman. It made him repeat the piece until the next one closed cleaner. By the 3rd month, he had 10 belts stacked in a box and a market table borrowed from a tomato seller. Rain came before the first customer. He wiped the belts dry with a cloth, lined them again, and stood while people stepped around the puddles. Noon passed. No one bought. A man finally lifted one belt, bent it, asked the price, and dropped it back as if it had burned him. Too high. He walked away. Kweku packed before sunset with every belt still in the box. The next week, he returned. He lowered nothing. He tightened his stitching, punched the hole straighter, and answered each question without apology. 1 belt sold, then 2 wallets. Then, a small bag ordered for a birthday. Weeks later, a hotel buyer stopped at the table, opened every flap, tugged every handle, and asked whether Kweku could make 20 guest gift bags before the end of the month. Kweku wrote the number slowly, checked the delivery date twice, and said yes. Old Mama Yawa stayed at the edge of the stall after the hotel buyer had gone, one hand resting on the table, the other turning a finished bag so the flap faced the light. She pressed the seam with her thumb. It held. She tugged the handle. It did not shift. Kweku waited, needles still between his fingers, because she inspected work the way a farmer inspected seed before planting. At last, she set the bag down between them and tapped the table once. If you had received that scholarship, where would your feet be standing today? Kweku opened his mouth, then shut it. The market kept moving around him, bus horns at the road, coins striking wood, a child calling for oranges, a trader dragging a crate across concrete. None of it answered for him. He looked past the stall to the line of traffic and measured the question as carefully as he measured leather. Maybe in the city, he said. Maybe studying something that sounded proper because people liked the name. Maybe sitting behind a desk, waiting for permission to build someone else's plan. Old Mama Yawa did not interrupt. Kweku picked up the bag again and ran one finger along the clean seam. I know what I lost that day, he continued, but I am still trying to count what it forced me to touch. Before the next word left his mouth, his phone vibrated hard against the table. The screen lit with the hotel manager's name. Kweku's hand stopped over it. Then he stepped aside and answered, The hotel manager did not begin with congratulations. He began with a problem. "Your first bags arrived this morning," he said. "Guests are asking where we bought them." Kweku gripped the edge of the stall, waiting for the word that would undo the delivery. The manager kept talking. The Accra branch no longer wanted a small monthly batch. They wanted 3 times the number, packed in sets, delivered on a fixed schedule. Kweku pulled a scrap of paper from under a stack of receipts and wrote while the line crackled. Then the manager added the second name, Kumasi. Same design, same standard, same deadline rhythm. Starting after the first shipment cleared, Kweku stopped writing. A bus horn split the road behind him, and he still heard the pencil roll against the table. "Please repeat the quantity," he said. The manager repeated it. Kweku wrote it again, slower, pressing hard enough to dent the paper. He multiplied the unit price by the Accra order. Then he added Kumasi. The first total looked wrong. He crossed it out and started over. The second total matched. He checked the dates, he checked the delivery terms. He subtracted leather, thread, transport, market fees, and the workshop cutter he would need to hire. Even after the costs, the yearly value stood higher than the scholarship figure he had copied into his notebook after the final list. Kweku looked from the figures to the unfinished bags on the table. The call ended. He did not move until the pencil tip snapped under his thumb. The next afternoon, Kweku packed sample bags into a box, pressed the lid down, and drew cord around the corners. Old Mama Yawa stopped beside the stall without greeting. She watched him finish the knot, then pointed at the box. "So, Kweku, tell me straight. Do you still wish your name had been on that scholarship list?" The cord slipped under his fingers. He did not answer at once. A cart scraped past the table. Kweku set one palm on the box and looked at the bags waiting for delivery. "No," he said. The word came out low, so he said it again. "No. If I am honest, I am glad it closed." He tightened the knot until the cord bit into the cardboard. It hurt. I would not choose that rain again. I would not stand in that corridor again if I had another way. But if that door had stayed open, I would have walked through it and never looked at this table. Old Mama Yawa tapped the box once. "That is how walls deceive people," she said. "When you stand close, you see only the block in front of your face. Step back, and some walls become signs. They do not say stop. They say, not this road, turn there." Kweku lifted the box onto a cart. One wheel dropped into a crack and held. He pushed. It stuck. Old Mama Yawa pushed from the side. Together they shoved until the wheel jumped free. Kweku caught the box before it slid. Mama Yawa pointed down the open lane. "See? Not the crack, the road." That week, Kweku took the long delivery route because the hotel boxes were too wide for the broken side lane. The cart rattled past the old school wall just as rain began tapping the gutters. Near the corridor, a new notice board had been fixed into the concrete. Students crowded around it, shoulder to shoulder, phones raised, voices punching through the wet air. Kweku slowed. One wheel hissed through a shallow puddle. A shout went up from the front of the crowd, then another, and several students ran toward the road to call home. At the edge of the group, one boy did not move. His finger traveled down the paper, reached the bottom, then returned to the top. He leaned closer. He checked the second column. Then he stepped back without folding his hands, without calling anyone, without making a sound. Kweku's grip tightened on the cart handle. For one breath, he stayed where he was. The delivery clock was running, and the boxes had to reach the station before the last bus. He looked toward the road. Then he reached into the side of the cart, pulled out a small card from his stall, and walked to the ledge below the board. A gust lifted one corner of the paper list. Kweku pressed the card flat with 2 fingers, slid it beneath a stone chip, and turned it so the printed phone number faced up. He did not touch the boy. He did not explain. He only pushed the cart forward. Behind him, the boy's hand reached the ledge.